Okay, we're going to get going here. The panel discussion. Welcome back, everyone. So first, we'll do some quick introductions. I'm Paul Herman from Chevron, and we'll just hand the mic. Jeff Messer.
Lou Walker from Interior.
Amy Hall from ONEOK.
Jeff Holman from ONEOK.
Want to begin? Okay.
And we're going to be handing around the microphone because the wired mics aren't working too well. So anyway, welcome to the session. So we're going to be talking about ONEOK's PODS implementation. And before we get going, can I see hands of all of the pipeline operators out there? All pipeline operators. Okay, so of the pipeline operators, keep your hand up if you have or are interested in implementing PODS 7. Okay. Keep your hands up. Okay, now keep your hands up if you have completed PODS 7 implementation. Okay. All right. Good. So it sounds like there's a lot of interest in this in PODS 7, and so with Chevron we're working on that as well. So we're very interested to hear some of the lessons learned from ONEOK. So to get going, I was going to hand it over to Tammy and let her provide kind of a background of the project and some of the highlights.
And then I'm going to hand it straight over to Josh.
That's a great delegator. So what Pegasus represents for us is an initiative that we've had across ONEOK for the last 5 or 6 years. It's called the Becoming One Initiative. We're just a company of acquisitions, like I'm sure everybody is here. We ended up having 3 different data models. We had 2 different tool sets. The domains were just a mess. So to get even Pegasus to get started, we started this process probably about 5 years ago with apps, consolidated them, consolidating our data where we could, with the roadmap that knowing that would 3 years ago start the Pegasus project. And the Pegasus project, by the way, the name, I think the name is great. It's fantastic. I figured out the name. So what it is the Pegasus was the horse thing in Greek mythology that they wrote down to slay the 3-headed monster. And the 3-headed monster was our data models. So they've been slayed. Pegasus is good. But the project was to consolidate and modernize our data, make it more accessible for people in the field, make it accessible for them to get data back to us, have some sort of data validation built in, and for our IT group to be able to create apps more quickly, I guess, and across all 3 business units rather than just one business unit, and then take another year to build it out for another month. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. So the real answer to why we did Pegasus is it represents a leap forward in our ability to service our customers.
All right.
We should have had Tuesday.
We're going to do a lot of handing of the mic. So I do have some questions that I've written up, but I want to open it up to the floor to see what specific questions that you guys have for our panel up here with regards to a concept and implementation. Any takers? Yes, Scott.
How do you manage security with the published web server? And who's allowed to edit it? Yeah.
So the really smart people that did the first part of that aren't here. But the only people who are allowed to edit the data today are the data editors on Chad's team. We do have a few exceptions to that rule. And we do have folks out in the field who can send in kind of those red lines and, edits that they want us to QA and QC. So they can do that as well. But really, Chad's team is the primary editors of our data.
Maybe Jeff can handle some of this security question.
So one of the things that we really didn't talk about from an architectural standpoint, that's a real change when implementing PODS 7 in the case of ONEOK using ArcGIS pipeline referencing and utility network as their editing tools, is that we're no longer connecting directly to the underlying geodatabase, right? All the editing happens through ArcGIS Pro and through services. And everybody's used to services to publish out maps to Coral and web maps and things like that. But what we actually do is take those services, we ingest them back into ArcGIS Pro. And that is the mechanism, because remember, server is now taking, because of things like the rule base, server is now taking a much more active role in the editing process. It is the gatekeeper into that backend SDE database, right? And so the nice thing about that is, since all that traffic, all that editing traffic is handled by the portal in ArcGIS server, you can control access at that level. And so no longer do we have these individual connection files sitting on individual desktops. So when DOT comes along and says, everybody change your password next month, we have to chase these things all down across the organization. We simply change them at the server level, that password, and everybody has to come through that layer, and we're protecting that data model. And this is a problem we used to have in older models, like if you ever use a geometric network, somebody could just take their ArcGIS desktop, connect it to it, and break the connectivity, right? They were just a desktop user. They had access to the underlying model. In the more modern approach, we don't allow that anymore. You have to have the credentials, and the data has to be checked as it goes into the data model.
So kind of a follow-up that I have. So one of the things that we're trying to do at Chevron is to enable some of our end users to do attribute editing in terms of, we have our pipeline engineers. So they're the ones who best know the specifications of the pipelines. And when construction projects are done, just to be able to validate that information. Is that, first of all, hand it over to ONEOK to see, are you looking to try and implement that type of editing model to enable users and within the organization to be able to edit data directly in the database?
Right now, and it's just through versions. So we'll allow certain users to edit the data via versions, but I don't think there'll ever be construction group that will enter all the data, and I don't think that it's not right now.
Okay.
I'll answer that for a second. One of the requests a lot of people are asking us about is, like, hey, can I just collect things in field maps and fire them into the geodatabase, like directly from the field? And the answer is complicated. Like the technical answer is yes, you can. The more complicated question is, should you? Right? Should you allow somebody in the field just to add a new valve that would affect the rule base, the pressure system, the isolation system? Probably not. You probably need to go through some validation, and more likely, the rest of the data to be TBC isn't in the hands of the guys in the field. It needs to be some combination of data sets that come together to make that final traceable, verifiable, complete. Everybody signs off on it and it's active. So sometimes we have to separate process from technology, because what you can do may not be what you should do. And when you're setting up these systems, and I think that's an important distinction as you're starting to think about processes and what you can and cannot do with the architecture you're implementing.
We did actually set up a priority one data review, so analysis.
quality of data, you mentioned that you don't just throw all your stuff in there and enable it and expect it. But Williams, we tried that and it was horrible. I think, I don't know if they're still cleaning data, I don't know if they're still cleaning data or not, but it's been, yes, they are, 2 years. So I'm curious, or 3 years, so I'm just curious a little bit of what you can share about the data quality of how to get it in there and where you are in that, expecting them to clean that up for a while.
Who's taking that?
Go ahead, Jay.
Get the data in there.
How was it? How was the quality once you looked at it?
Did the answer be very carefully?
I will, yeah, it's really high quality. But this actually, our MGL and our NGP data were pretty good. Our transmission data pipelines, they were good. But where this project really helped was our gathering data. We had a lot of data in our system. It just wasn't always in the correct place. So the TRC helping us with the data migration, they did a great job of ensuring that data out in Netherlands ended up where it was supposed to be. So it actually did improve our data project quality, especially in our gathering assets.
So, one other small point to add on like data migration. One of them just shut down 3 databases for 2.5 years. The whole migration was an iterative process. You pull apart the data on the back end or development server and you build your hierarchy. And then you run some error checks against it to find out where you have spatial data quality issues, linear referencing data quality issues. And with APR and the utility network, you're able to add in some other data quality checks. And then you start looking at your online data or your connectivity data attributes that support them. And it's basic SQL queries for finding out if something is right or wrong. Show me anything in my database where this value doesn't meet these criteria and spit it out. So now you're able to get spreadsheet reports of bad or questionable data in the hands of people that can edit that data or make decisions or review it. It's not always a GIS person. A lot of times it's a pipeline engineer or integrity person. So it's an iterative process. You start at the bottom, you start at the core. That's always the hardest part of getting one of these models built. In the past, we could just throw everything into a database and then 5 years later, it wasn't any cleaner, but it probably wasn't any worse either. So it's, maybe it wasn't.
So can you talk about the differences between just an APR migration and UNet?
You want to take this one?
So we load a lot of sample data, so we see all kinds of different quality coming in from an existing system point of view. Things that the linear reference system will allow, but the utility network doesn't, is things like valves just sitting mid-pipe, right? You think about the utility network, we want to say a valve, this pipe coming in, this pipe coming out. Well, what's that mean? It means pipe is split there. Most linear referencing systems don't have pipes split at their valves currently today in their current systems. Maybe the pipe specs are different on each side of the valve, but a lot of times it's the same pipe going through there. So if you just throw that in the utility network and hit go, it's going to produce a bunch of errors and say, hey, there's no break at these lines. But that's a process that you can clean up, right? There's a tool that you can run to break the lines. Things like multiple stack devices at the same exact location. The utility network doesn't like it when there's a valve and a T and a flange and a pipe and a thing all sitting exactly in the same space, right? So that is allowed in linear referencing and not allowed in utility networks. So those are the kind of things you have to think about when building a connectivity model, from linear reference data, is there's cleanup that needs to be done to make that happen. Linear referencing is a lot more lax about how that data spatially gets loaded onto those platforms.
Next question. Anyone, is there a question in the field?
What were your previous pediatrics like?
Amazing. From my recollection, they were every type of database you could possibly have. Oracle, SQL.
Well, no, I don't think we had SQL. I don't think we had SQL. We only had Oracle.
They used to be in SQL, then we transferred them to Oracle.
Relational for various versions of 4.
There was a 2 4s and a 3.
2 4s and a 3. I mean, it's every combination of how do we get 4 different or 3 different data.
So that's-
I didn't have anything to do with that.
So
No.
it's, again, you always want to start at the bottom. What are the bottom elements of a database? It's, you got tables that have data in it, you got attributes that have data in it, and you have domains with pull downlets. So what are all of those in your database, and where do those need to go in your future database, and where they just not have a home? So you take that times 3, 3.5 in some instances. And so when you get into the nuances of diameter is going to go to diameter, that's not a big deal, right? But then when you get into coding manufacturers or coding types across 3 different databases that had 3 different starting points or owners, or, you know, every different spelling of A.O. Smith, how did they manage the data? Was it overlapping? Were there gaps in it? Were there separate records? It gets, you guys want to talk about the domain mapping experience in itself across?
Well, I think he was also asking what tool. So
Oh.
I think did he use SQL scripting or domain?
So the bulk of the migration was done by force of will on 2 people. Money at ONEOK and Scott at TRC, and those guys are rock stars. But it was done, they use and cursors in the database to do some formatting, and then a lot of FME workbenches. And I'm not sure what else money ended up putting to it, but it was magic.
Money magic.
Yeah. So those were the tools that were largely, and then basically, because by the time you get to take data and put it into a geodatabase, it seems like the easiest way to do it is get it close to a basic append as you possibly can. Because that you can check data in a SQL view very easily. I can create a view and I can show it to Chad, and he can say, these are right, these are wrong. We're missing records here, we're missing that. That's stuff that a lot of people in this room, but if you're sending around Python scripts, it becomes harder and harder. And the number of people in your organization that can verify that becomes smaller and smaller. So it's, how do you show your data to people that can tell you what's right or wrong in that way? So, you know, GIS people kind of have to do things to serve our clients, and our clients are our colleagues that don't really care about where it is on the map. They just sort it in the spreadsheet, show me the best, show me the worst, show me the longest, show me the shortest.
So it sounds like there's a lot of components into this migration, this project. I know it's taken some time. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced?
Basically the same thing. It was the domains. We started off trying to find different databases that were comprised of at least 20 different companies over the years. We started off with a group of SMEs and a GIS group that got them all and tried to determine these, and we decided that would not work. And we did that for like 2 or 3 months, and maybe got like segment figured out. And kind of do it first pass. So then we go through and then send out to a larger group for discussion and approval. And if there was a need for discussion, then bring everyone together. If we would have tried that, we would have still been doing this project, because that was by far the worst part. I think that was about a year just to determine the domains and look at co-locals.
The biggest challenge, I think, maybe deciding, you know, kind of, we talked about this, where to start. I mean, I think that was one of our biggest challenges, is how do we start this project, and how do we implement this, and who do we get involved? And so we did a lot of planning right up front to determine who we wanted to be, you know, to be a part of that. And we ended up selecting TRC, and we worked very closely with Esri as well. So that helped us really get us started and get us going and understanding where we needed to be. inquiries from our requirements gathering way earlier on so that those workflows could have been built much sooner.
Is that workflow manager that you use?
Yes.
I have a question.
Simple differential. Just curious about the current state of the project perspective of the consumers of PODS data. So presumably your previous implementations have a lot of different consumers of the data, integrity analysis, reporting, whatever. Have you already migrated all those processes over to the new solution?
Yes. So we went live on September the 1st, and we did all of our, we made sure we had all of our integrations and everybody could consume the data from the new database in their current processes.
Just that easy, okay?
Yeah.
So that, I have a question on those integrations. So how,
Wait, well,
oh, you have another question? Okay.
What tiers do you guys?
What was
What
What
tiers?
tiers are you doing? Like, I wouldn't think we just do that. Because, like, operating pressure or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to, yeah, I don't.
Isolation, pressure, subsystem, system, and company, maybe? Operating company, I can't remember. You didn't do.
Modernization. I know we talked about that.
is there a phone of Randolph?
Yeah, right.
Can we pull off?
Yeah, probably on there. Yeah, but these are those S3 conversations that I checked out months ago.
They're called in.
All right, any other questions now?
For an integration project.
Hold on.
Data.
Please hold on. We'll give you mic.
For your name. My name is Larry, also
They were involved with the project, and we do have connections. We may do something in the future if they want to keep what they have for now and not make that part of this project.
Seeking one. Paul had one.
Any misperceptions about the project?
Probably the biggest one is that it would improve the quality of our data. It's going to improve it going forward. QC that we have built into it now, but the old legacy data, it just got moved over. We weren't precisely adding data that would fix that. For the most part, data is the same thing as it was. So yeah.
I think from an IT perspective is that it would reduce our infrastructure footprint, which it did not. We built out a very robust system that could handle large data sets going forward.
And I think managing our GIS enterprise system, we've always been GIS people in the GIS department or operations, but now you have DBAs, you have network, you have web people, you have, there are a lot of IT components to them. And the administration of that can be complicated. So you have to have your IT support in place to make sure that when it comes time to administer these servers or backups or publish features, that the person that you're calling understands what you're asking for. Because 5 years ago, 7 years ago, if you were to call your IT department and say my feature service is broken, they would probably just hang up on you. Right? So there's kind of a corporate level IT integration going on the back end of some of these companies who need to have that capability in their organization, because they're not just going to give administrative credentials to somebody to log into the web server and make backups. Maybe you guys do. No?
Any questions? Yes.
Have you Hold on.
We're miking you up.
How do you edit your data now that it's in PODS?
I feel like the answer to all of these questions is very carefully.
Workflows. So we built those workflows out in our workflow manager that we started way too late on. That's how we edit pretty much all. So there is a QC that goes in, it goes to the other groups to review. There is no piece of data that is a computer data set that is just a GIS person putting into our database. So yes, workflows and a little bit of magic at this point.
Our DS Pro.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So is that a lot different? Can you talk about the different skill sets or that you need now versus what you did previously? And what's the impact of that on the team and on, I guess, the rest of the people who are having the QC data?
Right now, it's much more difficult to enter data into our system. We anticipate Tammy's team building out tools for us to make that and make those workflows a little bit better. Because literally we just got them so we can get the system in place and get going. But there needs to be some improvement there on our side. But a lot of that is just getting the experience and the knowledge. We learned so much during this project. It's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, there's already 2 or 3 different times for training sessions for a week or 2, just for our whole group to learn how to do all this stuff. It's a lot. So it is really hard right now. I've got a few contractors since this project, and it is a learning curve for anybody to use this stuff. But the benefits at the end are phenomenal. So it's definitely worth it. Our data is going to be in better shape in the future, but it's going to take some time to build that bench strength up.
One thing I would add to that is because we built it out with workflows and on RGS Pro and using that, we have a lot more flexibility in how we sort of streamline or build out those workflows to tailor it to the business and how they want to do business, and making those modifications to the workflows go much faster than, what we were previously used to having to do with our tool sets. So I think once his team has gotten used to kind of the workflows and how they're going, our goal is to go, well, where's your pain points? Where are you seeing repetitive things that you're doing? And let's change those and automate them. And then that way you're not having to constantly be touching the same thing over and over again. So we knew that going in, that would be something we would have to look at. Waited too late to get those.
We're just not a priority.
Sorry, Jack.
Have you another question?
Yeah. How do you deal with new data coming in during the migration project? Say you have a new pipeline coming in or something, would you put the data, a new pipeline in your system as well as new system? And then, the reason why I ask is, say you put your data into your new system, how would you do the regulatory side of it for 4 days, resigning your old database system, check out data?
So we actually froze our data set and we just kind of kept coming in. We had a data freeze. We had an actual data freeze and said anything that was going into PODS on, from this particular day till go live is not going to go into either database. And so that work kind of stacked up. It was a 2-week implementation. And so they just had to kind of catch up when it was done. So we didn't worry about having to go, here, is it there, did we catch it? We just did the migration.
They were doing edits all the way up until that freeze date.
Yes, they did edits right up to the freeze date, but then once we froze the database, there were no edits that happened. We actually utilized that time frame for Chad's team to be really trained on the new system and the workflows, and so they weren't actually doing any data editing at the time, so they had a very concentrated effort to be trained during that time frame.
So just a question on, I'm over here. Just a question on size. So
How big of a database are we talking about? How many miles of pipeline? That's really the big question. And maybe how many people would it take to migrate that?
The database size, I think it's 42,000 miles. It's 18,000 miles of gathering, the rest is transmission. As far as the number of people.
Takes a village.
Yes. There were 12 people on my team,
10 on mine.
and then we had Scott from TRC, and there's probably 4 to 6 people on the Esri side who were working on this.
And so how many users do y'all have?
We have about
2,000.
2,000 users and that log into portal. So I'd say that's a rough estimate of how many users we have.
And then, I was there in the beginning, I don't know if y'all remember, a long time ago. I don't remember when we were in there talking about, how everybody do an icebreaker. We had 40 people, right, in the rest, and I asked everybody what their biggest drink was. Was that helpful? Do y'all identify that?
Sammy actually would send out gift baskets every now and then with that favorite drink in it.
This is true.
I think one of the things to kind of consider when you're considering an upgrade, I think upgrade short circuits the terminology of what we're talking about here. Anytime we go and we fundamentally change the system of record, there's a lot of downstream rippling effects. And a lot of organizations, if they don't plan it out right, or they don't look for the business value of it, you can spend millions of dollars and be right where you were day one, right? You're just changing out what the underlying structure looks like. But if you can really identify those places in the organization where you can really make change, and this is one of the things that Tammy and I worked on really early in her project. Basically, we sat down with Tammy and said, hey, we'd like to do all these projects for you. Look, mobility and field maps and portal. And Tammy basically said, listen, I've got 3 databases. I've got 3 portal maps. I've got 3 web maps. I've got 3 field map projects. I don't have enough staff to do this. And that was basically the genesis of this, was like, hey, we need to be able to do more for our organization with the same amount of resources we have today. And they're all dedicated to keeping the lights on of the system we have. Now, all of us have done all of these things, but the problem is they're so fragile on some of these older systems that you change one thing and you bring down the whole stack of cards. This is the same conversation I had with Paul. 4 months, fast forward a year later, and Paul's like, hey, I've got this thing, it's working, but it's so complicated. All I want to do is move it to the cloud, and it's challenging. So that's a real trick here when you think about an upgrade to PODS, is that simplification, giving you the ability to extend it, keep up with the Esri technology from a versioning perspective. Those are all business value cases that you can use to secure funding to do these projects. And the companies that have gone through this process, yes, it's painful, and yes, there's a lot of work to do, but they're now starting to see the value on the other side. As they come out of this, they can now bring more geospatial technology to the rest of the organization quicker, faster, and more efficiently than ever could before.
Yeah, I would second what Jeff was saying. In terms of creating the business value for these projects, to us it was, yes, there was a bit of a push. We were moving away from an on-prem Oracle to a hosted an Azure cloud scenario. So, Chevron was getting out of the Oracle environment, so we had to move anyway. But looking at the entire space of the infrastructure, there were a lot of opportunities to improve what we were doing, and we saw dramatically improved workflows. As I mentioned, we were trying to move a lot of the editing out of the central GIS and into the field, and the people who basically own the data. GIS doesn't own a lot of the data that's in the database, and so we want to enable our users, our key users, to be able to have access and edit in a secure environment, some of the attributes, so to take some of the pain off of the GIS side. And so looking, kind of driving back to that business value, if we can streamline, if we can look at the data quality side, if we can look at streamlined work processes, we implement an entirely new or updated mobile data collection solution on top of this. And so working with our field teams and integrating that in. Yes, it is painful to try to tie, the different work processes and bring that back into this new spatial environment. We were on a relational database before as well. And so there are lots of challenges that you have to work through. But I think having the environments, setting up the environments where you can test it out and work through the different scenarios. I think having everything in this spatial environment really adds a lot of perspective. What does that bring to your end users? So we're integrating with our integrity group a lot more closely than what we did before. So just being able to provide that data back into the systems that they're using adds a huge amount of value back to the company. In terms of reduced risks for the pipeline, being able to put your finger on that much more easily than what you were able to do in the past. So just a few things, food for thought as those of you who are looking at trying to do PODS 7 upgrade and have to get some business justification. Just some things to think about and how to more closely tie your project with the ongoing business needs and how the data management piece is so very important and can really help these other processes.
I have one thing, hold on a second,
Sorry.
talk about value, and I want to have a question about value, but first I want to see a show of hands who's on relational currently.
Enbridge can only raise their hand once. There's like a dozen of them over there.
Then talking about value, myself and Jackie, we just did a podcast recently, which is on the channel about the value of moving to PODS 7.0 and then just the value of PODS in itself. So make sure that you check out the PODS channel so that you can learn exactly how to develop an ROI on how to, create that value for your management so that, like Paul said, tie it to your business goals and tie it to the company's goals. That way it can be aligned and you can get what you want, which is go on PODS 7, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Steven, question?
It's for Chad or Tammy. You mentioned the learning curve is huge and it's such a different way of doing things. And you talked about needing to do more workflow planning up front. Do you feel like you even have the knowledge to do that workflow planning up front, or do you need to actually have it implemented to get that knowledge?
I think we do now, but I don't think we did at the time. We're so used to using a vendor's tools that did all these steps for us in the background. And now you're manually doing all those steps until you build that up in a workflow that makes it automatically happen. So yeah, get some training on it.
I think what would have helped us, and we called this out, we had a lessons learned after our project, and I think what would have helped us better, we had a long list of requirements that we had built out, but we didn't get them down to a real granular level to be able to adequately build out those workflows. And so we said things and we knew we wanted a reroute tool of some sort, be able to do a reroute, but we didn't get down to the very specifics of those. And I think that kind of tripped us up a little bit when we were building out those workflows and going, oh, we need to do this and this and this. So.
Yeah, it's always just been, I'm going to do a reroute, not a 1-point reroute, a 2-point reroute, this type of reroute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if we had done that up front, I think that would have helped facilitate building those workflows a little bit better.
So kind of a follow on. So those are a couple points to make that ensure your project was successful. Are there any other items that you would think are necessary to have a successful implementation?
I would do a step that we took We actually went over to the Williams folks, and they had a great conversation with us after they got done with their project, and told us all their pain points. So contact your peers in this room, and have those conversations. That's why we're here. So it's a good thing.
That was very beneficial to us. They gave us kind of a summary of their lessons learned that they had at the time.
The benefit of the PODS community, right, is working together and sharing innovation with one another. And I'm hearing that you guys use PODS member service companies to support you through the project as well. So it's awesome. Sorry, hold on, we have a question back here from Scott.
I have a philosophical question.
We're still.
Pipeline and how much pipe do you put into PODS? Is it regulatory driven? Do you put facility piping in? What are your thoughts on what to put in and where to stop?
This is coming from the tank guy. Thank you very much for that one, Scott.
You're pulling this thing out of my hand.
So we stop at the fence right. We've discussed going inside the fence, but at this point, we don't have the resources to build all those out. But I'm taking notes for a business case in the future, because I think it would be beneficial for a lot of things that we're trying to do as far as integrity management for facilities, but just for basic flow analysis, yeah.
Hey, I just want to add a couple other like lessons learned pain points from somebody who has participated in one or two PODS migrations over the years. I constantly see a couple things when we're working on some of these projects. One of them is underestimating the amount of time that you're going to need access to your subject matter experts in your organization. It's really tough because those people in your company are very busy, right? Another one is putting time out of quality control, data quality, and that stuff at the end. And then like the third one is you really need to consider a feedback loop for your end users. And this is the ghost of Christmas future talking for Tammy and Chad. A feedback loop for your end users. And your end users are not always just your GIS data editors. They're the people that are consuming your data. Because I'm just using ONEOK as an example. They went from 3 databases, 3 portal maps to 1 database and a full-on Esri Enterprise database. That data got pushed and pulled and moved to hundreds of different locations, brand new locations. So Chad is going to get a phone call that says the GIS is broken. And it's going to be up to Chad to figure out what the heck that means. And we know from experience that that could be SQL Server is down, Amazon is down, or Azure is down, or as simple as I was expecting this data to be here and it's not here. And that requires a tremendous amount of energy from the business side to chase down the answers to those questions as they come up and take a vested interest in making sure that the person that asks that question or has that problem gets it solved and knows that they're being listened to. Because when we have done this in the past, GIS is broken, PODS is broken, the system doesn't work, you get a lot of those calls for the first year. And they decrease rapidly as you go. And success is eventually, they just don't call you. Nobody's ever going to build a statue for you. Well, maybe Paul. But you have to, if you're going to get end user adoption, track your metrics, find out how many people are using that system, and pay attention to what your end users are saying, and dedicate some time to making sure they're able to deal with that stuff.
I think one thing to add to that is the editing environment is a very personal experience for people who sit there every day and put pipe and valves and fittings in the GIS. If you just come in and just swap out that Swiss Army knife with a new set of tools, like that's disruptive. I'll challenge you if I said, hey, tomorrow we're all getting a new version of Outlook. Everybody in this room probably would panic, right? Wait, no, I use that every day. I know how my folders are oriented. What do you mean you're changing this? So that sort of change management process, even to the point where, and Timmy and I were having a conversation over lunch, like somebody was like, hey, the lines are green now. It used to be red. Like it's a very personal experience that I go through. And sometimes as GIS professionals or IT professionals or implementation people, we sort of overlook that. Oh, it's just pro. Like I've been using it forever. When you put it in front of somebody for the first day, it's a sea change moment for them, right? Regardless of the process and the tools and all the things that go on top of that. Specific to the question about where you stop, I think what we're striving for from a PODS and an Esri perspective is the data model and software shouldn't be the barrier to where you stop. You should be able to decide where you stop. Some people are going to stop at the fence line, other people are going to stop inside the building somewhere. But you shouldn't get to a point where your software just says, I can't go any further. Like we want to remove that barrier so you can decide how deep into that digital twin you want to go. And everybody's decision is going to be different along those different lines.
Actually, I just want to add on to what Luke said. It's absolutely right. I tell all my clients there's a cost to add data, and there's a cost to maintain data. So really talk to your stakeholders and figure out what you need in your database. And everything, diameter, wall height, make a list of everything, because maintaining that data could be very challenging, especially since it's coming from other groups. So make sure you know exactly what you want to put in there. Maybe start out small and then grow. And it's kind of what Luke said.
Yeah, good point. PODS has placeholders for a lot of data. It doesn't mean that you have to populate everything in the model.
Right. Two questions. First one, how do you handle the downstream apps viewing of the data? Because for example, the device feature class, if you will, has the valves, the different PODS tables, and they can't just go and click a valve table and drag it into their map, right? How do you denormalize or get the data together for downstream apps, or does that make sense?
So for all those apps, we created feature services for all those. So we had to rewrite all those feature services and, make the new connections and figure out where everything was. We tried to do that so there was very little interruption for our field workers, or any of the apps that we're using as far as, in portal or anything else. So we tried to minimize that as much as possible, but they are using services, feature services.
They didn't get trained on UNet, I assume, or did they?
No.
Right, they still know that valve is a valve and they're not.
Right. Zero.
Yes.
It's all math.
And then you mentioned the domains. We had the same issue when I was with Williams, I'm with Rosen now, but when I was with Williams, we had the same issue with the agreeing on the code list values and the domains in the database. How do you manage that going forward if somebody wants to change something? Are you just going to say, no, you can't change it?
No, obviously you have to change that, but we have right now it's just an IT ticket process, but they have to go through my group and we have to approve it. It's that same thing when they go to that SME group. If they all give it a thumbs up, then obviously we have to change it.
Oh, I can't remember.
So Jackie, just relative to that question about the big table being split into, there's a concept in the geodatabase called subtyping. And when you set up a subtype layer in the geodatabase, when you add it to your map, those appear to be separate layers. So you will get a valve layer, but it is part of that larger feature class. So the system will allow you to view it as individual components, even though it's going back to one underlying table.
With the development of different domain values and whatnot you were just talking about, how far up your supply chain have you gone with developing templates and processes to bring data into the company that aren't yet associated with the project, so that the data is ready for importation into the system when the project is finished?
We just had to solve this problem in the last week. We have a new document that explains our needs and what we need when and what format we need it in. And then we just provide that geodatabase that's already populated with all our domains. And I think we're building a new line now, and that's all they did was pull that package, give that to the vendor, and we're good to go. So it's a lot easier than it used to be.
A lot of middle things at the table.
I know, right?
good handwork.
Yeah, I'll second that. We do the similar type process, copy of our geodatabase with the domains in it, and that has saved so much time. The other step, and I don't know if you guys do this as well, but is all the document linking from a TDC perspective, is we have that all built in for our new construction projects. So that's all brought in and sucked into our productive PODS database. Oh, hold on.
One last thing, there's a new kind of element in the geodatabase to take a look at. It's called contingent values. This allows you to connect domains together. So if I select this domain, this value from this domain list, then only these values are appropriate for the next one. So we think about the domains as being individual elements with contingent values in the geodatabase. Now you can kind of connect them together. So as you start populating that pipe, if you select a certain diameter, then only these ANSI ratings are available, only these pipe grades are available, and kind of clean up those data sets, which allows us to do some interesting things that we've never been able to do before with domains.
So when you're getting the data from the vendors that you guys already have established in a C file, what type of utility network task you have to do as far as cleaning up dirty areas? Do you have to assign the connectivity relationships? And
Tammy pulled me out of that part of the training.
Yeah, so not only, specifying what to get from the contractor, but topology and how things are connected is going to be critical in that process as well.
so we're going to assign that before it gets. So we're going to assign that before it gets, say, to ONEOK, right?
Yeah, so certain rules like, hey, we need to split the line at mainline block valves, or, if we're going to do a lateral off of this main line, there must be a T. Must locate the T where those two lines connect. Those are going to be part of that survey specification.
Are they also going to use the utility network rule or tools, like if you have, say, two junctions that are going to try to occupy the same geometric or network location, if you will, that they could attach, like, say, like the connectivity relationship? Would you have them on that as well, or is that going to be something done on the ONEOK side?
I don't think you guys have got that far down the rabbit hole as far as connectivity coming in from new field data yet. My personal opinion is probably there's some back-end processes to clean that up. The more you put on, more kind of technical requirements like that you put on the survey contractor, first of all, you're going to pay through the nose for that additional expertise. And 9 times out of 10, they're not probably going to get right the first time anyway, right? So there's probably going to be some processes to load that connectivity model up as data is received from the field.
So do you have your I guess, your rules loosened up to where you can load it in and clean your dirty areas and generate some networks, or are you going to wait for that?
We'll let you know.
I don't think they've got that far down the rabbit hole yet as far as built-in processes.
Okay, thanks.
Stop creating problems, Josh.
Now I'm worried.
Now it's gonna happen.
Okay, it's been quite a journey, it sounds like, for you guys and through this process. So if there were, looking back, I know we've gone through some pain points. Is there anything that you would do differently in this project?
I'm tired.
Well, that's a long list. Again, I think the building out user stories, and your business requirements to a very granular level would be one big thing that I would do differently.
I probably have those change champion meetings that we had. I would start those earlier and have buy-in the whole project.
We implemented what we call change champions, so that we would have folks, SMEs or people out in the business who could represent the project and help us, help identify where there were pockets of folks that were maybe complaining or maybe didn't understand what was going on, so that we could reach out to those. I think we probably implemented them a little bit late in the project, and we should have done that a little bit sooner. One other thing that I think would change is communication. We had a long list of stakeholders that we identified for the project. We sent communications out to them, we talked to them, we visited with them. However, we didn't realize until, closer to implementation that they weren't disseminating that information down to their organizations. And so I think we would probably try to do something a little bit different so that more individuals out in the field and, down to the individual contributor really understood what was happening and what was coming.
You got their input on the design phase.
So,
Yeah.
Tammy, to that end, we have a question that came in online. Guys, we have 32 people online that are here with us virtually. And we have a question from them. First, before the questions, you guys, this has been a landmark project and really has moved the industry forward. And I want to thank you again so much for coming to share all of your insight with us and participating in this and with PODS for sure. So before I get a chance to, or forget to say it later, thank you very much. So question is, how is training carried out today to users and editors? Are they able to utilize sub-networks for analysis for other methods of operation?
I'd say we are not using the sub-networks for operations yet. It would be something that we will be doing.
Okay.
You asked about training the data editors.
Yes.
So we did that. We had a lot of sort of work that went through a couple of months in advance, but when it came down to the last few individuals, we did that the 2 weeks that we were in a frozen state.
Yeah. But another question from online is, Chad, you and I actually talked about this a bunch, a little bit. Why did you choose the PODS data model?
Sure. So very early on in the project, at the very beginning of the project, we decided that we wanted to do a pilot. And so we sat down and we thought, okay, we'll do a pilot with PODS. And I'm like, well, we're already really familiar with PODS. We have 3 PODS databases as it is now. What we're not familiar with is UPDM. So we took the opportunity to do our pilot with UPDM to see if it would fit our data, because we knew already that PODS did. And so in that, we learned a lot about APR and utility network and how that was kind of structured. And that UPDM, sorry, Jeff, didn't work for us. But, it solidified our decision very early on, and that, we didn't have to think through that or justify it to our leadership. So that was kind of where we came from that.
And did your leadership back you up on that?
Yep.
Yeah, we're very comfortable with that.
Yeah, once we had done the pilot and said, here are the reasons why this doesn't work. And so here are the reasons why we're going with PODS. That was a no-brainer at that point.
It would have taken something for us to get off. I know there's certain directors that just had no qualms about telling me that PODS was the way they wanted to go because they were comfortable with it. Been using it for 25 years.
They refer to our GIS as PODS.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I have people who still have PODS in their trying to do jobs. PODS supervisor, Cool. Other questions? Do you have anything else, Paul?
Any takeaways from the project?
If you want to build a business case, the first people you should talk to is your modeling team. They will be backing you 100%. Our modeling team for our gathering assets used to be able to run one model a month because it took so much time to establish that connectivity, and now they'll be able to run that every day. So that's a huge money maker for us. So talk to those people. They'll give you the money.
Talk to the ONEOK modeling team.
Find your own.
It's not a project that can be done overnight. It does take time. From really sitting down and starting the planning phase and to implementation, it was a 3-year project. And there was and I felt like it went really fast. So it took a lot. I think the other thing, maybe this would be another thing that we could say, is that we planned initially to have 2 migration runs and then the final production migration run. We ended up doing 4 migration runs and then the final production run. And I would suggest that you not skip that part because that was very important to us to be able to see where we had data issues along the way. And I think it made a huge difference in the outcome. Anything else from you?
All right, thank you all to our panelists. I certainly appreciate the insight. A small token of appreciation from PODS is a thank you for your time. It's ironic, Jeff, that you mentioned the Swiss Army knife.
Weapons.
Don't take it on the plane.
I did do cups for you guys, but they didn't come in on cups. So I was trying to continue the theme to have a congratulatory drink now that, you support.
All right, in the home stretch, Monique is going to wrap up the afternoon with a few other items.
Okay, awesome. All right, Deb, can you hear me okay? Yes, okay, we're good. So yeah, huge thanks to our panel. They're doing just a ton of work to be here, prep work, to get all this great information out to all of you. So we hope that you learned a lot and are gonna walk away with some insights. So first thing is that, as you heard, the advanced release is available right now for all of our active members. So if you would like to look at a copy of that advanced release as well as the documentation, you can email me, email Luke, and we'll make sure that first of all, we get your dues paid, and then we get you access to the advanced release, right? And then second, please don't forget to complete the survey, right? We need to get feedback from you guys like Dale was talking about, right? We're developing a roadmap for the future, so we need to make sure that we know which way to steer the ship, right? Also, I want to invite up Abe. Come on up. Abe with Petra IT is is one of our gold sponsors, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Petra IT before we go to New Century, and then we're going to break to booze, y'all. Hold on.
Hey guys. Thank you for being here and surviving the afternoon. I'm supposed to announce drinks, right? But before that, Monique said I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes. No, I'm just going to introduce Petra IT to you. Some of you already know about us, know us pretty well. We can the OG of pipeline data management, new construction data, and have been working all over the world, pretty much internationally. Apart from that, we now have a full suite of TVC solutions and services. And just to give you a history with PODS, PipeTrack, pipeline data management solution for new construction, was based on PODS, using PODS and delivering into PODS since 2006. So it's been a long time, and I'd like to thank all the volunteers and the board for the great work you guys are doing and taking it forward. And it was really exciting to see PODS go international recently, to meet Monique and Todd in Prague at the EPLOCA annual convention. And yes, pretty much PODS is now open to everybody from right across from East Asia to Europe. And they're the joint local initiative, which has started out recently in developing some new construction modules, which I think we spoke about already. So thank you guys, and welcome to drinks.
Come on, thank you, Abe, for sponsoring us and Petra IT to go. Appreciate it. And now, without further ado, save the best for last. This is a little bit.
Hi, everyone. We're with New Century and Petra IT, so we are supporting the social that you call the booze session.
Pool party?
Yeah. So you're welcome for that. We appreciate the opportunity to be a low-level partner and provide this. So my name is Tony Lopez. I'm the Senior Director of Business Development for New Century. If you're not aware, 3 years ago, we were acquired by a larger organization, the Mistrust Group. And just quick update from that time that 3 years ago, we've been infused with a lot of additional resources, a lot of other things that this company has really provided us. And hearing from the panel, which is fantastic, you've heard all of the key elements. There's so many of the key elements, from workflow to proper data modeling to planning. Those are things that certainly that we're involved in today. Our group with the Mistrust Group and through New Century, and also our Integrity Plus division, focusing on regulatory compliance and other services. We have a division that's focused on ILI specifically, also inside the fence. You've probably seen many times Jeff Allen and his presentations, fantastic presentations of that inside the fence, outside the fence. Look for our company to be providing quite a bit more capability there. We're excited about that. Also, the integration of ILI data. Another item that was mentioned, which I really appreciate, is change management. We all know how critical that is. So think of data changing that could impact MAOP or your class. How quick you need to know those changes. Those are some new things that we're doing in our company. Hey, real quick with a few trivia questions. We're doing some giveaways, gratuitous giveaways here. So let me do this really quick here. What was the first year PODS organization? What was that first year? Who's got the answer to that? 98 winner. I think that's within plus or minus 3 years. So winner right there, Scott. Very good. So we've got some giveaways over here, right? And by the way, we'll also be at the event tomorrow with Esri. So another one here. How many countries are using PODS? This was raised earlier. 22. Yes. Okay. And one more. When will POD 702 with ILI be released? Winner, November 1st. There you go. Thanks, everyone. Come by and visit us here, and certainly we'll be at the Esri session tomorrow. Thank you.
So Tony and tell Ron this as well. Thank you very much for loaning us Kirk all the time. Kirk runs our CCDM crew, and he keeps all the cats herded. And Ave and Petro IT, thank you for loaning us Rick all the time, who helps us out on the board and everything else. So you can see that we are a big community, right? We are definitely all connected in a big community, and so we really appreciate it. We have a lot more value coming up for all of our current members and our new members as well. So don't forget to save the date for the spring forum, which is going to be adjacent to the Esri Energy Resources Conference. Yes, is that right? And we're also going to do another PODS party at PPIM as well in February. So everybody has the website. You're going to be getting more notifications about new stuff coming out, a detailed membership directory, and all kind of other cool stuff that we're working on. So unless there are any closing comments from the panel or Todd or anything that I forgot from anybody else, thank you again to all of our sponsors, Global GIS, Geonamic, Petro IT, and New Century. Yep. Did everybody get the survey link? If you didn't, I'm going to send a follow-up email to everybody that registered with the survey link as well, so that you guys can give us that feedback, as long as it's positive. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, again, thanks to our gold sponsors. We're going to have a little PODS party out on the pool deck. So when you go out of these doors,